what I do is what I think is important. And like the movie, I'm a majority of one. I come up with something that I think is worth preserving, the culture, and so what? The object is to sell something, and in order to do that, you have to get the customer to, where are you, right? You go to Walgreens, they don't have to tell you they're a drugstore. Or Jewel doesn't have to tell you they're a grocery store. But here, what the hell is it, right? So first is we're 100,000 magazines back to 1576. Mostly people come here to get a magazine for the week someone's born or has an anniversary or a business gift or something else. Secondly, here, we're the last place to sell flags between Wisconsin and Indiana. Because there's almost no one left in this business in the United States, not just Cook County, the United States, there's 4 people left with stores. So I'm 25%. Last Buffalo. I know what's in the magazines. There's no computer here. I know what's in almost everything here, and it's all stream of consciousness. And people say, how can you do that? How can you possibly know it? And I said, well, how did people run stores before computers? You go to International Harvester in 1940, and they've got 1,000 machines, and they need a screw to fix something. And if you don't know where the screw is, how can you be in business? So computers, I think, change people's self-reliance. So this isn't hard for me, but computers are hard for me. So it's relative. The store is organized into 104 categories. And when DePaul, where you're from, when the entrepreneurial class from Edward Papa Bethany, I kept practicing that name so I could just say it, Papa Bethany, made up a list. I gave them a list of 104 categories, not knowing that they were going to use that as a basis of trying to figure out a way to make this work in some economic form. What they didn't understand is that the 104 categories were in my mind, but that they're interactive and that they flowed from group. They weren't actually delineated, so that a World War II Life magazine might have Jimmy Stewart on the cover, and inside it might have the bombing of Pearl Harbor. So what is it, 3 groups, right? Mm-hmm. So I ran into a real problem of comprehension trying to have 22-year-olds and 21-year-olds tell me how to organize this, and then they want me to tell them what it was worth and how many did they have. How many did I have of each of these 104 categories out of 140,000 magazines? And they wouldn't take no for an answer, like there was an answer. I said, there is no answer. And then they said, these are nice people. They really, I like them very much that they, I mean, who am I, right? They took an interest. They said, well, all you need, one of them, Hira is Pakistani, beautiful girl, smart, well-dressed, everything, said, well, all you need is $140,000, and that'll make a difference. And I said, you're right, except that you cannot get money from anyone. She said, not your friends, not bank, not. I said, no, any money to be gotten was gotten, and I started with nothing. And she insisted, this is not criticism, Hira, if you ever see this, that there was a source, that there was a relative somewhere with gold in their casket, that I only had to find that relative, and there wasn't. And then I asked her a question. I said, Hira, do you know who the Mustangs are? And she said, no. And I said, the Mustangs are a people, and they live in Nepal, and they're on the border with Pakistan and India. You know about them? Are you interested in them? Do you want to know more about your culture and the people living near you? I can tell you about that. I can't come up with any money, but I know about the Mustangs. And that little tiny detail is meant to be indicative of this place is a treasure. I don't know if it's possible to bridge the gap between what's important, what's worth knowing. I've been writing since '58. I wrote poetry. Everything I do was preceded by writing. Um, and I told you I started collecting it when I was 13 because Kennedy was shot. And the next year, I come from a home that's extraordinarily violent and insane, and so I left in the middle of the night on June 8th, 1964, when I was 14. It was 2 weeks before I graduated grammar school. Never published anything, and decades went by. Anyway, I've had 32 operations. The first major one was cancer when I was 18. I lost part of my face. I have the same thing Roger Ebert had, if you know who he is. There was something at Michael Reese, which is now gone, which was massive radiation therapy for people with swollen thyroid glands. And they thought, wow, this is the big new thing, except it killed 90% of the people that they used it on. And what was explained to me when the government got around to finding me, because they wanted to find all the survivors, to track what was going to happen through the years. And I'm lucky. This reorganizes lucky. What is lucky? I lost my jaw on my Christmas vacation from Circle. December 20th, 1968, not knowing that exactly 1 year later I would be drafted and rejected because I was missing a jaw. They want you perfect before you're killed. That's in this book, about the strangeness of being the nephew of and son of somebody who spent 3.5 and 5 years in the military and who were very patriotic, my father and his brother. Father and brother, taken on the west side of Chicago, and they're the children of immigrants. And in World War I had family on both sides fighting each other. Then my parents got married and kept it going. So, for my being, there's an oddity. I write about the strangeness of being rejected, because there's no question that if I was not part of this. I wasn't rebelling against anything. And if I was drafted, I would have gone. But I was self-employed, had a newsstand, had something going. Anyway, surgery continued many times. The first time was steel, titanium, which is a lot less powerful than you. They make airplanes, but it also dissolves with body acid. So they replaced it with the top of my hip, and that didn't work. And then 12 years later, in '82, the U of C pioneered microvascular surgery. So they took 2 ribs, one with an artery, and they put them together, and they put it here and here. And they fashioned a new jaw. And in the process, these brilliant people at the University of Chicago, where I'm born and went to high school, cut the 7th nerve and paralyzed this side part of my face. And I think about irony. The whole thing was just cosmetic surgery. I wasn't expecting paralysis in exchange for symmetry. That's what I got. But I write about it. I've written about all these things. Everything sells a little bit, but not enough to make it viable. And there's a train coming in a block away. I think it's a giant sculpture, because they keep telling us the train's coming. I don't know where the train's coming from. It may be coming from Kyrgyzstan, but it ain't here. And the hope is that it'll populate this downtown, what is called downtown. They could call it the Mojave Desert, same thing, right? There's no people there, no people here. So this is Never Never Land. There is one. And it's Fantasyland. There's a limit on how long I can do this. I saw a brain surgeon 2 weeks ago. And I just wrote something online on different slants. Go read it. It's on friendship. And underneath the date it says, written on the train, which is true, on the way to see my brain surgeon, period, he was fine, end of quotation. It's defining friendship in 450 words. I don't know. He said I was fine, but he also said the things that are wrong are not going to get better. The after effects of the brain surgery are rarely, but just enough to make life miserable, a lack of facial recognition. So, I mean, I don't know you, but I know you a little. What if I know you for 20 years and you came in and said, "Hi, how are you?" And I didn't know who you were because I didn't recognize you until you said something and gave me some way of remembering who you were. That happens. The first surgery was invasive. They cut a little door. The second one, they called me back. And if you go online, it's called Brain Surgery Rebellion. It's a story I wrote about what it's like to have brain surgery. It's not a wonderful experience. When they called me back 4 months later in April of 2004, there was a tumor too deep to go after, so they use gamma knife surgery. But you can't do it. You can't really focus gamma knives and not damage something else. And the something else besides the facial recognition was names. It's not you telling me your names and forgetting. That would be possibly understandable. You might not be really offended. Let's say I told you about this movie, and it was made, I think, in 42 or 43, and it was Ingrid Bergman and Humphrey Bogart. You already know. Don't say it, but you already probably know. In all the details of the movie, maybe the scenes and sequence, right? Except I can't remember the name of the movie, which is Casablanca. But something so famous that even you, so much younger, 70 years after it's made, you know the movie, right? It's a cultural touchstone. That's what it's like. You can't recall names. And then you can't do anything. I can wait an hour, or maybe it'll be 2 o'clock in the morning, and the name will just kind of roll by like that. And they told me you can't do anything. And so, considering that I run this without a computer, and which people think is phenomenal, but I can't remember names every day. So what motivates me at almost 62 is a desire for recognition, and that I have something valuable to contribute, and that it isn't that I'm some guy that opens the door every single day of the year to sell old magazines, that it's not defining my life. I want to do something that lasts. I don't want all the surgery and all the work and all the whatever I've done that mattered to just be a little article on page 9,000 of some newspaper, which probably won't exist by then anyway, saying so-and-so did this, this, and this, he died. Goodbye.